Hi, Mary here at Mary's Heirloom Seeds, and I want to share with you some of our favorite heirloom bean varieties. So before we get started, I want to share with you the different types of beans. So we have snap beans, which are typically referred to as green beans. They're usually eaten fresh or steamed. So your typical green bean you get at the store or you grow out in your garden. Then you have dry soup beans. Those are beans that you would grow to preserve and save as a dried bean for soup. Then you have a scarlet runner bean. Those are definitely a favorite here at Mary's Heirloom Seeds, and we'll get to those a little later on. They're a runner, so they do tend to run. They grow tall and wide. And then you have a lima bean. Some people love them, some people hate them, but we do like them, and we do have a few varieties here at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. And then you have a tapari bean. Now, a tapari bean is a type of bean that is specifically grown and developed in the Southwest by Native Americans, and it is specifically fantastic for those of you who live in drought conditions like us in the Southwest. So at Mary's Heirloom Seeds, we offer over 650 varieties of heirloom seeds. But tonight we're going to talk to you about heirloom beans. So the first variety I have to share with you is called the Scarlet Runner bean, as I mentioned just now. The Scarlet Runner bean is very large. It can grow 20 feet long, so the vines will grow up a trellis or pretty much up anything that you provide for it. It's approximately 85 days to maturity. It does enjoy cool weather. So for those of you in cool weather climates, if you have enough growing season, it's 85 days, or start it indoors and then plant it outside when it's ready. The bright flowers attract pollinators, specifically hummingbirds. So if you would like to attract hummingbirds to your garden, the Scarlet Runner bean is excellent. Now, before I get too much more into our video, I want to share with you, I do not store any of our seeds or any of our beans in glass clear containers. Everything is typically in a brown paper bag or in a large bin that is stored properly to avoid bugs and also to avoid light. Light can degrade your seeds. You don't really want to store it in clear glass in the light. But for this video, we have everything in glass so that you can actually see what we're talking about, right? So next I have Kentucky Wonder Bean. A Kentucky Wonder Bean is a snap bean. It is a green bean variety, but it's a pole bean. As far as snap beans go, green beans go, you have pole beans and you have bush beans. The Kentucky Wonder Bean is one that is very, very popular among our homesteaders because it grows tall. So if you have a small space or you want to grow the most amount of beans in a small space, a pole bean is a great variety for you. A Kentucky Wonder Bean is about 65 days to maturity. It has an exceptional flavor and 9-inch pods. So if you're looking for a green bean that gives you a long bean, plenty to eat there, the Kentucky Wonder is fantastic for you. Like I said, it is a pole bean, and they will grow 5 pods approximately in each cluster. So it is a great producer. It's one of the most popular varieties of pole beans we carry at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. It is a very old variety and does require trellising because it is a pole bean. So you're going to want to give it a little bit of space, and you want to give it some support. A lot of people do some sort of teepee to grow around. You could plant sunflowers and then have them wrap around. That's another option for you as well. Next is our all-time favorite. It's definitely a customer favorite. It's definitely a favorite of mine, and that is the Blue Lake pole bean. Sorry, Blue Lake bush bean. It's available in a pole bean, but the bush bean is the most popular. It is heat tolerant. It grows very well in Florida. It grows very well in California, as well as Texas, Arizona, and other hot climates. So if you want a fantastic bush bean that will produce lots of beans for you, the Blue Lake bush bean is fantastic. Now, notice these are white. The Blue Lake bush bean is actually a green bean, but the beans, once dried, produce a white bean to share with you. So the great thing about the Blue Lake bush bean, like I said, it is a heavy producer. It's approximately 60 days till it's ready. It is the most popular, like I said, at Mary's Heirloom Seeds, and there's no trellis or any type of support required. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the beginning is beans don't need a lot of fertilizer. Beans, especially from seed, if you've seen my recent video, Seeds Are Amazing, that's my recent video. Seeds don't need a lot of fertilizer. Seeds produce their own. In the leaves and in the actual seed itself, it has everything it needs to get started early on in life. Beans in particular don't need a lot of fertilizer at all, and we'll get to that closer to the end of the video after we've shared with you some of these beans. So Blue Lake bush bean, if you want something that's a heavy duty producer, this is a fantastic variety. Let's see, what else do we have here? We have a Jacob's cattle bean. See that there? This is also called a trout bean, and but it's a very old variety, and the Jacob's cattle is the name that is most popular or has been the longest it's called. One thing about heirloom seeds is a lot of them have multiple names. They've been passed down for generations. So one community might call it one thing, and the next community might call it another. It might be a regional thing. So a trout bean is also what this is called. You notice the beans are a little mottled. So it's called Jacob's cattle bean, also called a trout bean. It is 85 to 95 days, and this is a soup bean. It has a very full flavor, and it keeps its shape under a lot of cooking. So a lot of you that make beans, specifically baked beans, this is a fantastic variety because it holds its shape very well. It's very easy to grow. Like I said, 85 to 95 days, and you've got your fancy little soup bean there. It makes a great Christmas gift. So if you grow a lot of these, you can make your own little like homemade baked bean kit. So this would be a really fun variety to grow on your homestead. The next one we have is also a soup bean. This is called a Calypso bean. This is a bush variety, and it's also called an orca bean. Like I said, a lot of these beans have 2 different names or 3 different names, sometimes depending on where it's from. This has its origin in the Caribbean, so it does grow in hot climates. So for those of you in warmer areas like California, Texas, Arizona, Florida, the orca bean on our website, it's called the Calypso bean. It is a bush bean variety. It is about 80 days. It is a very dependable variety. The black and white is probably why it's called an orca bean, and it's also called a yin-yang bean, of course, because of the black and white. So it doubles in size when cooked. So you get much more bang for your buck with the orca bean than some of the other varieties that you would make cooked beans or soup beans from. So keep that in mind when you're cooking it. It will double in size, which is pretty exciting. Let's see, what else do we have here? We have a rattlesnake pole bean. The rattlesnake pole bean is about 65 to 85 days. Now, what makes the rattlesnake pole bean so exciting? This little fancy little bean actually doesn't look like anything fancy from the seed, actually produces a green bean with purple stripes. So this is kind of fun and exciting for a homestead if you've got kids or you've got people in your homestead that might be a little picky. The Rattlesnake pole bean is a fantastic variety because it's pretty exciting. It's not your standard green bean, so it does look nice and pretty. If you're looking for something that is drought tolerant, the Rattlesnake bean is a fantastic variety. It can handle hot, humid, and drought conditions. So I know I keep saying this. For people in California especially, we're in a drought all the time, pretty much, it seems like. So if you have drought conditions, if you have an area that it doesn't get water a lot, the Rattlesnake pole bean is a fantastic variety. See that there? It produces vigorous vines, so that's a plus. If you need a hardy variety to grow in your area, it's a fantastic option for you. Now, something extra special we have available for you. This is called a Christmas pole lima bean. The Christmas pole lima bean is a pole bean, as I mentioned, and it is a lima bean variety. So for those of you that like lima beans, again, it's also called a butter bean, and it's also called a Florida pole. So you have, again, 3 different names for the same bean variety. Why is it called a Florida pole? Because it is one of the best beans, one of the best lima bean varieties for Florida. Awesome, right? If you don't know, Mary's Heirloom Seeds was started back in 2011 in Florida. So a lot of the varieties that we offer do very well in Florida because, of course, our customers want to know what to grow where they're living. So why is this called a Christmas lima bean? Well, when you cook it, the red and white streaks kind of turn pink. So you have a nice pink bean, which is kind of festive for Christmas, right? I guess. It is an heirloom variety dating back into the 1800s. So even though it wasn't created in the 1800s, but that's how far we have it traced. So if you are looking for a lima bean variety that will grow in your area, especially if you're in Florida, the Christmas pole lima bean is a fantastic option for you. Now, what else do we have? Probably one of the more exciting varieties. It's not too fancy or anything, and it doesn't look like much from the seeds. You have multiple colors, dark to light tan, dark brown, I guess, to light tan. This is called a royalty purple bush bean. So this bean variety grows purple on the plant. It's a bush variety, so it's easy to grow in a compact bush. Only trouble is the beans turn green once you steam them. But again, if you've got little ones that love to grow food and they want some exciting color, or you just want to add some color to your garden, the royalty purple potted bean is a great variety. It's fun to grow. It's a great producer. Not as hardy of a producer as the Blue Lake bush bean, but it's still a great option for a garden if you want some color. And I probably have one more variety. This one I mentioned on our Facebook page recently. This is called a Vortex pole bean. Notice I label everything. Label all of your seeds is really important. The Vortex pole bean is a super shiny, it's a French heirloom from the 1800s. And this was a special request from one of our customers. He said that his grandfather or his wife's grandfather grew the Vortex bean and they really wanted to grow it in their garden. So I thought, well, I gotta find it then. It is nearly stringless green bean. It's a French green bean, so it's a little more slender than, say, the Blue Lake bush bean, but it's a great option for the garden. Now, I mentioned growing green beans and growing beans in general. Beans fix their own nitrogen. Now, the way that works is, to put it simply, a bean can pull the nitrogen out of the air and into the plant. So you don't need to add a lot of fertilizer to your garden. You need a simple bed with organic matter, add some compost, add some manure to it, and let it go. You don't need to add a lot of extra stuff to it, and that's one of the things that makes beans so awesome to grow. It's very easy and very simple to grow beans because you don't need the added fertilizers to it. They're very low key and low maintenance, which, goodness, as a homesteader, low maintenance is awesome, right? So if you are growing in an area that you aren't really sure what's in your garden, in your soil, a simple soil test would be helpful. If you have yellowing leaves on your beans after a couple weeks or after a month or two, you might want to add a little bit of nitrogen fertilizer to your garden, but you don't need a lot. Other than that, they grow really well as long as they have good drained soil and plenty of organic matter. Now, beans don't like to be sitting in water. So if you have an area that doesn't get a lot of proper drainage, you might need to consider planting beans in another area. Because if you plant bean seeds and you don't have good drainage, your beans will rot. So that's something you can keep in consideration with your growing. And as far as green beans go, I highly recommend succession planting. Now, succession planting is planting, say, a row or 2 rows or a couple of rows. And then a week or 2 later, planting another couple of rows. And then 2 weeks later, planting another couple of rows. And that way you're not having all of your beans come to maturity at the same time. Now, if you want to can everything all at once, you're more than welcome to do that. But for me, I notice that beans don't stay fresh. They don't stay firm for very long. So you're going to want to plant either enough to harvest all at once and can it all at once, or freeze it all at once, or you're going to want to use succession planting so you don't have a couple pounds of beans ready immediately that you've got to find a way to either eat or freeze. Now, as far as beans go, you can can them, you can freeze them, you can eat them fresh, or you can share them with your friends. Beans are a fantastic crop for a homestead, like I said, because they're pretty low maintenance and they're pretty easy to grow. Compost your plants once you're finished with them because they will add plenty of organic matter to your garden. I'm Mary at Mary's Heirloom Seeds. I hope you've enjoyed our bean video. I hope to have a lot more seed-specific varieties in the future. And if you have any questions, you could always email me at mary@marysheirloomseeds.com. Check out our website, which is marysheirloomseeds.com. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and definitely subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. I'm Mary, signing off, and happy planting.